Welcome into the Balancing Act. I'm Dan Strafford. Today, Andy and I are talking about a timely and potentially controversial topic that's related to our previous series on the reskilling revolution. We're going to be exploring the oft-used phrase, nobody wants to work anymore. The phrase is not new and has echoed through the years as members of older generations question the work ethic of the generations that follow them. However, the phrase has become seemingly more toxic during the pandemic, employed by many as catch-all for a host of supply-demand imbalances that exist in today's labor markets. Now, over the course of the next few episodes, Andy will be talking to guests about their perspective on the challenges that face hiring managers today and unpack the root causes to the Great Resignation and other tectonic shifts that are occurring in the talent economy. That's a big setup here, Andy. But I do want to say hi and hope you're doing well. How's life? How is the Midwest? How's the weather starting to warm up? Things good?
Yeah, everything's cool up here in the Great White North of Wisconsin. It's not as snowy as it used to be back in the day, and spring comes much earlier. I had my hip replaced a couple of weeks ago. Today is 3 weeks in, and I'm a lot more mobile. And the pain that I had that was really killing me before is traded for a different kind of pain, but one that I know I can manage going forward. Yeah.
There you have it. I think that's great. It's you're now a bionic man, right? You can start, was it the $6 Million Man? Is that what the show was many years ago?
Steve Austin.
You just need to keep building parts, right, over time. Get the adamantium from Marvel Universe and you'll be Wolverine. It'll be fine. You'll be great. Andy, I think this is a phrase that you're spot on. The introduction here, it's gained momentum is how the phrase I would use. It seems to be a lot more pervasive in the way it's used and the way it's almost, deployed by certain people is the best way I can use it. Why do you think this phrase, though, nobody wants to work anymore, is so unhelpful at a time like we're at right now?
Yeah, when I was a young man, as you mentioned at the outset, the generation that came before me had this narrative about my generation. My generation didn't want to work anymore. And so that side of things is kind of constant. The next generation never works as hard as the generation that comes before it. But now this phrase is so black and white, and it's so unhelpful because you're trying to compartmentalize an entire series of talent market challenges all in one phrase.
Right.
And it's, and it's mainly making it a derogatory kind of, again, weaponized statement to talk about everything that's wrong with the decisions that are being made by the people that are involved in the Great Resignation. I was on a flight from Mexico back to the United States earlier in the year from vacation, and shockingly, the pilot comes out for a restroom break and strikes up a conversation with the people in the front row, and they're talking about how more bags get lost now, and that's because nobody wants to work anymore, quote unquote. And I was shocked, number one, that the pilot would come out and start talking like that. And moreover, he was talking about his own team members. He was referring to people in his business that quote unquote don't want to work anymore. So talking in a very, very derogatory fashion about people who are frankly starting to change their minds about their relationship with work.
It makes total sense as a sort of a stage setting here for this discussion. And I think you nailed it right there. The relationship we have with our work and how we're assessing that. So as we discuss, I do want to level set a term I used in the intro, Great Resignation, just so, again, everybody's on the same page and understands what we're talking about. Can you give us, level set on what that term is referring to?
Yeah, over the last 18 months, there have been a tremendous number of individuals who have left their current jobs and are looking for new work. Back in January, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, 4.3 million people quit their jobs just in January, and that was very near the record that was set back in November. There are 11.3 million job openings in the marketplace. And so this, the Great Resignation is it is a key driver of, but not the only driver, but a key driver of these very large supply and demand imbalances. We talk about supply chains in terms of driving broken supply chains that are helping to drive inflation on a global basis. And sitting right alongside that is this massive game of musical chairs that's happening in our talent markets, where individuals are really rethinking their relationship with work and taking action on it.
You've hit on some of these already, but I'm wondering, is there one primary cause in your viewpoint of the Great Resignation? What would that be for the listeners who are trying to really understand what's going on here?
Yeah, on the Saturday Morning Muse on my website, we're talking a lot about trust versus accountability.
Yep.
We've had an entire series on that here on the podcast. People are, I would say two things here. People are rethinking their relationship with work. And one of those rethinks has to do with the alignment of their own personal purpose, with that of the corporation that they work for. People are, the pandemic has really the great awakening, if you will, of the mindset of, do I really want to put up with that toxic work environment, that boss that has had their thumb on everything that I do? I don't have a lot of agency. I don't have a lot of autonomy.
Yep.
I'm not making the contribution that I feel that I should be making, and my personal purpose, what makes me tick, the answer to why I exist, doesn't align with that of the company that I'm working for. So I kind of minced two things together there, but one is my personal purpose and the alignment of that, and the other is the awakening of, gosh, I've been putting up with work that is and toxic work environments, and I'm exhausted when the day is over, because there's not the fit and fitness, and folks are now willing to take those leaps that maybe they were not willing to take before.
Yep. And understanding of self-worth comes a long way. And I think more people have been empowered to understand themselves more in relation to work. What's the biggest risk, though, for corporate leaders as they face work rebalance, talent supply, and demand? What's the risk you see for leaders out there that they really have to assess and understand?
Yeah. This is simple and probably too black and white. We're complaining about a phrase that gets applied in a black and white fashion to a set of very complex issues. But what I'm about to say is potentially also in that category, which is leaders and managers who want things to go back to the way things were.
Yep.
We hear it all the time in many circles that we just want to go back to normal. Completely understandable. Humans abhor change. Humans hate change, and we've been through so much just gut wrenching change. We've watched people die. We've watched, things that we've held dear for decades just get totally tossed up and jumbled during the pandemic. So yes, folks don't like change, and I completely understand why a leader or manager would want to quickly go back to the way things were, because hey, that's comfortable, and it helps more people become and be comfortable. But coming out and hope, we're moving from pandemic to endemic. There is becoming this societal acceptance of this virus. We're going to be living with it for an extended period of time. But the last thing that we should do is imagine that we're all going to go back into the office and we're all going to sit in a cube and we're all going to just go and we're all going to drive 30 minutes back and forth, an hour back and forth to work and listen to podcasts in the car and ignore our families, and all the things that we were doing before. And to imagine that the world of work is going to be the same is just a terrible mindset to have, because the world is not going back to the way it was.
It makes so much sense, and clear-eyed from my perspective of what's happening to the way you're talking about it. But it is worth such a broader discussion. So I'm really looking forward to the conversations you're going to have to dive into this topic deeper as you go on. Before the show, though, we were talking about the connection between the reskilling revolution and the Great Resignation. Can you bring the listeners in on that conversation?
Yeah, so we've spent a number of episodes talking about the reskilling revolution and the need for alternative pathways into the world of work. Again, not a very strong rethink of our relationship with talent and how people become prepared for the world of work. The Great Resignation is this rethink from the individual's side. So you've got corporations thinking about how reskilling needs to happen and talent management within their organizations. You have individuals through the Great Resignation having very similar conversations with themselves and their families about their relationship with work. So tying those two things together, or at least some sort of thread between them, I think is very important. So as individuals rethink their relationship with work, they should also be taking an inventory of their skills and aligning their current skills with the skills of the future, because this hot job market is not going to last forever. This ability for an individual to rethink their relationship with work and go out into the workforce and have 8, 9 different options or job offers that they might be able to take, that labor market is going to tighten again over time, and it will become not the seller's market that it is today, but it'll become a buyer's market in the future. And yes, continually rethink your relationship with work, but simultaneously be thinking about the skills that you have, how you're applying them, and having both a learning and development plan for yourself, and then obviously as a leader of a business, you hear us talking all the time about having solid learning and development plan for you as a business, a really foundation. It's a foundational part of your business. So just like the personal and the professional come together, the reskilling revolution and the Great Resignation, I think, are kind of inextricably linked here.
It makes a ton of sense to me, Andy, and I think you've started to build the foundation for conversations here with professionals and experienced people to hopefully help the listeners break this down. And I've appreciated specifically on this episode the dual track to an extent, the idea of the individual who is working and has to think of themselves, and also the manager, how to engage with those individuals. And I'm sure those will be part of the conversations as we go on. There's a lot here. It isn't black and white. Though some advice we may give at times can seem that way. But the guests, I'm sure, will bring a lot of expertise and knowledge. Any final words, any things that pop into your head over this conversation that you want to make sure maybe even people are bringing into those future conversations they'll hear here on the podcast?
Yeah. So, two things, and I want to make sure I'm going to ask you. I want to ask you a question before we drop. So make sure you remind me of that.
You bet.
So, two things. Number one, if the words "nobody wants to work anymore" are forming on your lips before they come out, just do a half halt, do a gut check, and ask yourself, is this going to be a really helpful comment in this moment, or am I really hiding some kind of root cause of how I think about what's happening in a very, very complex set of issues? It's the same as people blaming high gas prices on the president of the United States. That is such a narrow view. It's right in exactly the same category. Gas prices are a wildly complicated set of global issues. Inflation, as an offshoot of that, is wildly complicated. Do some Econ 101, right. Kind of go back.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Go back to the complexity of markets. Yep. It is never as simple as just one catch-all statement. So it's kind of general advice, and this particular one is I think super unhelpful for us.
Yeah, the phrase that always comes to my mind is correlation does not equal causation, right? And just because things are next to one another or happening at the same time, your example of the president's influence on gas prices, that is not an A to B situation. That's more of like an A to M or A to L. Like, there are lots of ways to get there. And I think that's a great point. And Andy, the thing we've talked about so many times over, I think there's life advice in your book, and I think there's life advice in these podcasts of, we could all do better to think before we speak. We could all do better to assess, is this helpful? Is what I'm about to share on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on my text chain with my friends, is this helpful? Is this doing good? Or am I being a jerk? Am I, doing something just to feel better for myself? And I think that's great advice for anyone right now.
Yeah. Twitter and social media generally, but Twitter specifically, everything has to be, and the media drives this as well. Everything has to be a headline. Everything has to be boiled down to some pithy, punchy soundbite, and it's just not the real world does not work that way. So I really think that we need to be much more careful with our words. Now, before we go,
yes, sir.
What's when you hear somebody throw out that phrase, what goes through your mind?
I appreciate you asking, and it's something when we talked about this episode and we went back and forth on email. You shared notes. I tried to catalog when I've heard it. Right, I've tried to sit back and, like your conversation you overheard from the pilot and the passengers on that airplane. I think there are a bunch of factors, just like we just discussed. When I hear that phrase, I do go generational first. It does feel very much like the old guard or the retiring class is looking and saying, well, they're lazy. They don't know how to pull themselves up from the bootstrap. All those phrases, right? I think that's part of it. I think it's cyclical though as well. And I've talked to you off air about this, but I find it fascinating the way our education system works. In that 60s, 70s, we had skilled laborers, right? And we had trade schools and we had vocational schools that were part of the American fiber. And then somewhere along the way, those were made less than. Hey, you need to go get a college education. You need a degree. No matter what, you need a degree. You're going to have a degree. Okay. That generation sort of went through. I was probably the tail end of that. You have to have a degree. No matter what, you want to go into broadcasting, have to have a degree. You want to be an actor, need to have a degree. Okay. Now you need to have an advanced degree. You need to have a master's. You need to have, and so it's this cycle of what the older generation is teaching kids, and then they enter the workforce, and the older generation is, whoa, that's not what we meant. We still want you to work hard. We just meant, you need to have some self-worth. Oh, I do have self-worth. I want to work a job where I care about the outcome. Oh, sure. Yeah, all of us would love that. So it's just these cycles that I think are perpetuating themselves. I think there are tons of people out there who have, to your point, have reassessed their careers and said, hey, I don't like this. And I have the opportunity to say no. There are plenty of people out there, and I've been one of them in my life, where you need the paycheck. And you're going to go in and you're going to work because you need to pay your bills and take care of your family, whatever it may be. But I think we have grown a generation and grown a middle class that's able sometimes to say, I'm going to reassess things. And I'm gonna try to find something I love, because I spend 60 hours a week doing this thing. I don't want to loathe it. I don't want to, come home angry. So I think this is a great conversation. And what I hope, and praise a little strong there, but what I hope is there are managers out there who take this to heart and manage accordingly to help their employees, one, care about the job they have now so they don't resign, but two, get them to think as a team, as an organization, to better everyone, to put everyone in a position where work-life balance is good, product is good, your customers are happy with where you're heading, sustainability, all those things. I think these are great conversations to have. I'm really intrigued by who's going to be coming on to talk about this and really dive into the topic. I don't know if you have any previews for us there, anybody that you've lined up yet, but can you divulge anyone yet, or are we still keeping that close to the vest?
Yeah, we're going to have our old colleague Lauren Thomas Tavel, who's at 2U on the show. We're going to have future of work thought leader from Canada, Jared Linson, on the show. So we'll have and then some additional guests that are yet to be named. But before you do the outro, there was a second piece of advice that I wanted to give.
Yes, please.
And that is that the labor markets, although this is a seller's market for talent right now, and we are rethinking our relationship with work, we do want high trust, high accountability environments. Let's make sure that we're not swinging too far. What I'm alluding to there is that the seller of talent, meaning the individual who is selling their talents to the company, I don't want to see us tip over into an environment where there's almost a disrespect for the work environment that gets established. Oh, I'm a potential employee of yours. I am Superman. I'm coming to your rescue. Right. You need to love everything that I do. Yes, we're coming out of decades of managers and toxic work environments and low trust work environments that were driven by accidental managers. And so, now managers need to be much more careful about what they say and what they do to ensure that they keep everybody happy. None of that in the long term is healthy. There has to be a balance that's struck between employer and employee, and the tools that we're developing here at andrewtemte.com and in our next book, and having everything aligned on the foundation of purpose. And building those high trust, high accountability environments will help strike that appropriate balance so that leaders, managers, individual contributors, we're all rowing in the same direction. We're all being very respectful to one another. We all understand the work-life balance that we're all trying to achieve. So to come out of this and swing all the way to the other side where the employees have all the power and management is terrible, and let's make management feel bad about being managers. Let's strike the appropriate balance there.
Yep. Little humble. Let's all be a little humble and be accepting, little grace as we all come out of the pandemic and whatever else is going on in the world. There's a lot constantly on everyone's mind. So I think balance is obviously the key phrase here on the Balancing Act podcast, but also makes so much sense when it comes to how to operate and how to enter into that contract, right? When you're going to work for someone or you're hiring someone to work for you, the balance of everything matters so much. Andy, where can people find? I know there's the book, there's the podcast, there's the website. I guess the website is the best place for people to start. Where can we send them?
Yep, the website's the best place. AndrewTempty.com. That's where the Saturday Morning Muse is. The podcast is all there. But please subscribe, rate, and like the podcast. Your rating is very, very important to us. So we appreciate that.
The algorithms love the rating. So you always want to rate and like and share on social media, and find Andy on LinkedIn. He loves conversations, as I hope exhibited by this podcast. And I've seen over the years, loves meeting new people and new perspectives. So if you're out there, definitely link up on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me too, but I'm less exciting. Would love to chat with anyone out there in education or the world of work. Again, like, subscribe, and rate the podcast on your favorite podcasting app. And Andy will have some great guests coming up on this here podcast, The Balancing Act, presented by Andrew Tempty.